Greetings, dear students. This lecture is devoted to a discussion of the features of the philosophy of ancient Greek and Rome. Usually, the system of this philosophical teaching is called ancient philosophy. We will consider these following issues: concepts of Antiqua, Greek natural philosophy, Socrates as the founder of Greek philosophy. Antiqua is a set of philosophical teaching that arose in ancient Greek and Rome in the period from the 6th century before our century to 6th in our time. In the history of ancient philosophy, several periods of its development can be distinguished. Some research suggests considering the development of ancient philosophy in three main periods: period of natural philosophy, classical period, and Hellenistic period. Some research share in the history of ancient philosophy the period before Socrates and the period after Socrates. From here, we can conclude that the figure of Socrates had a special meaning in the philosophical thought of ancient Greek. In the period before Socrates, or in the natural philosophical period, individual philosophers and philosophical schools were engaged in the search for the fundamental principle of the world. They tried to study the laws of nature in order to understand and explain how everything happens and how everything in the world changes. The most famous schools of this period: Milesian schools, School of Heraclitus, School of Pythagoras, the teachings of Empedocles, Eleus School, a School of Atomistics, School of the Sophistics. Each of the schools offered its own version of the fundamental principle of the world, arche. The natural philosophy period in Greek philosophy spans the 5 centuries before our century. The famous philosophers of the Millet schools were among the first to propose systematic concepts for that time about the arche, that is, about the fundamental principle of the world. Thales believed that everything originates from water. Water is the source of life. Of course, Thales' explanation was associated with those views of the time. But later, scientists did a lot of research. and one of the versions of the origin of life on our planet is connected with the fact that the first molecule could appear in water. Thales' contemporaries from Milets offered their version of arche. Later, this became the reason for many studies by scientists. Some versions have scientific evidence today. The philosopher Heraclit from Ephes is often called the first representative of spontaneous dialectics. He viewed the world as a content change, and according to his version, the beginning of everything is fire. According to Heraclitus, everything happens in the world thanks to opposites. Fire is contradictory in nature. He can be the cause of the new and can absorb everything. The name of Pythagoras is known to many from the course of geometry at school. Pythagoras and his disciples developed their own system of the origin and development of the world. In their opinion, everything is based on numbers. The combination of numbers is harmonious. With the help of numbers, we can understand and explain all the processes in the world. The unit rules the world. This is the formula of the philosophy of Pythagoras. There are different opinions about the representatives of the Elea school. Their teaching is very incomprehensible. Their teaching is very incomprehensible. But what contribution did they make to philosophy and knowledge in general? They first raised the issue of being or non-being. Philosophers of the Elea school were the first to study being as a separate and main problem, and they proved that movement does not exist. It seems inconceivable, but Zenon from the Elect school left his proofs that there is no movement in the world. It exists only for our sense and for our consciences. You can learn more about this by looking for information on Zenon's aporias. Many may be familiar with Democritus from a physics course at school. Democritus offered his version of the fundamental principle of everything. He considered that all objects, space and time have the most invisible facts. He called them atoms. The school of the Sophists is known in the history of philosophy for the fact that the Sophists were the first to take Platon feels. The Sophists wanted to prove that the truth depends on the person, from how he will present it to society. And the Sophists paid great attention to teaching rhetoric. Protagoras is a prominent representative of the school of Sophists. His famous saying, man is the measure of all things. Socrates is an outstanding thinker not only of Athens but of the world to this day. Socrates turned philosophy upside down. He was the first to professionally address the human problem. Socrates invented his method of philosophizing. They are called irony and maieutica. Socrates himself did not leave behind a single written work. We know about Socrates for the most part from Plato's dialogues. The main philosophical idea of Socrates is to admit that you know nothing. But this is the greatest courage, because the one who admits his ignorance is on the right track. He is able to think, reason, and in the end is able to attain correct knowledge. Socrates plays a special role in ancient philosophy, and the new turn in Greek philosophy begins with him. Sometimes it is called an anthropological revolution. In this regard, historians of philosophy consider the periodization of ancient philosophy as pre-Socratic and post-Socratic periods. Thank you very much. Goodbye, dear student.